Tuesday, July the 2nd, 2013. Welcome to Conversations, the official MTA podcast. I'm Alex Piroglu, and today I'm joined by Tony Plummer. Tony Plummer is Director of Helsman Economics and will be presenting at the monthly meeting of the UK chapter of the Market Technicians Association. Tony has worked and traded in financial markets since 1976. He is the Director of Helsman Economics, having formerly been a Director of Hambros Bank, of Hambros Fund Management, and of Rhombus Research Limited. The seminal work describes the influence of collective psychology on economic activity and financial market price behavior. It is sixth edition and has been translated into a number of languages. Tony is also the author of The Low Vibration, the revelation of William D. Gunn, published this year. Tony's book reveals the presence of a fundamental pattern in asset price movements and in economic behavior. Both the presentation and the interview itself have been videoed and are available to watch at the MTA website, along with the archives of all the UK chapter monthly meetings, technical presentations, and presenter interview videos as well. Without further delay, let's talk to Tony. Tony,
hello, Alex.
Thank you very much for agreeing to present to the UK chapter. Let's begin with the first question, which is, could you please give us some information about your personal educational background before getting involved with technical analysis?
Yes, surely. It was pretty basic, pretty standard actually. I did a degree at the University of Kent in economics and went on from there to do a master's degree at the London School of Economics. So when I came out and eventually joined financial markets, so to speak, it was a very conventional background that I was bringing to the game.
I understand. And how did you get first involved with technical analysis?
Well, it was really interesting actually, because my conventional background did not prepare me for what I actually met. And I well remember a crisis in 1979 actually, where it was quite obvious that I was working in the gilt market at the time, and it was quite obvious that standard economics didn't account for what was happening. And I went off to a big bookshop in London, I think it's long since shut down, and bought a book which turned out to be on the Elliott wave, and that was a revelation. You know, markets went in trends and they had cycles and patterns, and I loved it, and that was the starting point really.
And how did you progress from there, from a career point of view?
Well, at that time I was working for Hambros Bank, and I just started really to trade gilts, which is the London Treasury bonds, and I really enjoyed that, you know, the excitement of being in that sort of environment, the people I met, people who weren't too interested in theory, just the practice of getting things done. And I basically stayed with that for about 25 years, working up through the hierarchy, so to speak. But I learnt an awful lot just doing the job.
I understand. And could you tell us a bit more about Helsman Economics, your day-to-day responsibilities, and also the most challenging aspect of your job?
Surely. I left the city in 1999, the end of 1999, and I went on from there to help set up a small company called Rhombus Research. And there were 4 economists, and I contributed my bit on technical analysis to that. So we had a good combination. But eventually everybody wanted to do their own thing, and so I set up my own little operation, Helsman Economics. And the basic idea, although it's got economics in the title, the basic approach is technical. It's looking for patterns in economic statistics, financial market statistics, that sort of thing, which I'm going to be talking about today. And I suppose the most challenging thing is making sure that I've got the right data to do that sort of work. The benefit, obviously, is I'm my own boss, so I do the work when I want to.
Could you also talk about a bit your work forecasting financial markets, which is a classic book in technical analysis. Actually, to tell you the truth, was one of the ones I read when I first came into the industry. Could you tell us about that, and then we'll progress to your latest work, please?
Thank you. Yes, forecasting financial markets was the result of really my initial experience coming out of economics and then working in a financial market where collective psychology was so important. And it took me a long time to realize that rational behavior was not what was happening in a financial market. On the face of it, it seemed to be rational, but underneath there was collective emotions. And there was just nothing, absolutely nothing at the time that addressed that issue. So I started writing it in the mid-80s, actually, because I'd been doing a lot of reading on kind of fringe reading, really. Fritjof Capra, and which was to do with systems theory, that sort of thing. And it was just so applicable. So financial markets, forecasting financial markets brought together a lot of ideas from outside of the world of economics and tried to put them into something that addressed crowd psychology and collective behavior. And even if I do say so myself, looking back in retrospect, it was an important book.
It was, it really was. So could you give us a bit about the background for your current work, about the work of W. D. Gunn?
Yes, when I'd finished forecasting financial markets, I suppose I was open to new ideas, and one of the things that had come across my desk was a book called The Tunnel Through the Air by William Gann, and I couldn't make head nor tail of it. It was so obscure and quite honestly, as a work of literature, wasn't very attractive. But people kept on saying there's something in it, and I could see that there was probably something in it. And I started off with looking at his own. In the book, he directs people towards St. Matthew's Gospel, the Christian Gospel. And I took that up, and he was right. There was something really, really profound in it, which was to do with patterns of behavior, although it's not obvious from that it was patterns of behavior. So I started writing this in sort of the mid-90s, and I'd done 2/3 of the book by the late 90s. And then there was a lapse or a gap, because I didn't know where the next piece of information was coming from. And in late 2011 I got it. I just sort of I was reading another book and I thought, what if? And it was the answer. And I applied it to St. Matthew's Gospel, to William Gann's book, and another one which was written by somebody called George Gurdjieff. And it was the same, and it all came together, and that was the result of it. It was a wonderful experience, actually.
And something I guess we'll be also learning more about at the chapter meeting.
Yes, well, I hope we'll be able to get through the material, but yes, that's the idea.
We got actually a lot of requests, especially from people from the States, to have your presentation recorded. So a lot of people will be eagerly waiting for it. Okay, let's proceed to the next question. We usually call it the toolbox. Could you please talk about your favorite tools and techniques? What do you specialize in?
Well, that's a difficult one, because there is so much, and yet I can answer it very easily, because I concentrate on two particular features of markets. One is the pattern, which I shall be talking about, and the other is the golden ratio. I tend to concentrate these days on long-term perspective, so I'm not into short-term trading. But once you step away from that and do take the longer-term perspective, then something like the golden ratio is unbelievably important. I mean, literally unbelievably important, because it separates a correction from a trend change. Basically, that's the easiest way of putting it. So it's got to be something that's working with collective psychology. They don't necessarily work in the very short term, but once you're taking a view, they work, and they work extremely well.
Okay, that's a very interesting comment. I know we don't have a chart available, but would it be possible to describe to us how you could use the ratio to distinguish between a trend change and a correction.
Yes, absolutely. A market, in principle, will retain 62% of its impulse wave. The other way of saying that is that it will limit its corrections to 38.2% unless the fundamentals are changing. That's the big difference. So if it breaks the 38.2% retracement, some element within the fundamentals are going to be changing. So if you're a longer term investor, you can start trading from the other side. You know, so if you've been in a bull and you're now going into a bear, then you trade from the bear side. That's the big signal. One example of it was the bottom of the market after 2002. The market rallied up, retraced 38.2% of the previous bear, pulled back, rallied, went through the top, and it was a very clear signal for a bull run. It's got the same sort of idea behind it as Dow theory, but I think this is more important. I think this is the senior signal.
Okay. Question would be, who have been your greatest influences in terms of formulating your techniques? I would probably assume Elliott and Gunn.
Well, Elliott was my first one, and the book that I read was written by Bob Beckman, who's now dead, unfortunately. He was a great character, better I suspect at sort of advertising the business of investment and technical analysis. But I have to mention him because he was important, and also Robert Prechter's book, which I bought shortly afterwards. But most of it has been my own work. The people I work with at Hambros Bank were really important in informing me about how markets really did behave. But as far as applying it to my written work, it's very much my own.
Okay, which brings us to our next question. Through the years that you have been trading and researching markets, if you could distill that knowledge in 3 technical analysis principles, for example, don't fight the tape, which would these be? The first, I'm not sure I can produce 3 actually, but the first one certainly is remember that this is, that collective psychology is there, and if you're not careful, you will get dragged into it. That's the strength of technical analysis. Technical analysis keeps you out of, to some extent, out of that environment of collective psychology. The second one is follow your signals with a stop, and be very clear about both. I think that would be my message basically. And okay, looking back over your vast experience, if you could pick up the phone and call 25-year-old Tony, what advice would you give him regarding his career and involvement in financial markets?
That's a really interesting question, actually. It would be because of the environment I was in, that there is so much information, knowledge, and exciting people in financial markets who are really interested in the world and how people behave. Listen to what they say.
Great. And fun fact, what does Tony do to relax outside of market hours? What's your hobby?
Sleep was my first response to that. I do a lot of cycling. I try to balance the work bit with getting out basically, to put it crudely. I don't actually have any in-house hobbies like stamp collecting or anything like that.
Great. Okay, Tony, I can't thank you enough for the opportunity of this interview and meeting you in person as well.
That's all right.
I guess that's a wrap for today's MTA podcast. My name is Alex Spiroglu. My guest today, of course, was none other than Tony Plummer. For the MTA, I'll be seeing you again at the next chapter meeting. Thank you.